All right, time for another one. It's been a minute. Appreciate all the new subscribers. Had about 30 new subscribers. That's great. Appreciate you. Numbers are climbing. Us nerdy, geeky few. Hardcore sign nerds. So appreciate you following along. But usually, you know, I'll do an explainer if a sign's kind of weird. But we've been doing a lot of channel letters, a lot of basic monuments. So I haven't really needed to make a video recently. But as you can see, what's going on with all this, this one needs some explaining. And this one actually is kind of cool. First time I've used 3D software to confirm what I normally do in 2D or 2.5D software, Corel. So what we have going on is a little tribute to, I guess, the homie who invented the scimitar wingtip that we now see is ubiquitous on all commercial airliners now have this tip. It's on that tip, you know? So there's a little display on loan to our local airport. And so they want to add this display. I don't know if it's going to travel with them or not, but it's going to be this display with this little curved wall. And it's going to say, hey, this is what this thing is, instead of just walking by it going, what is that? So this explains what it's all about. And so we need to make it look like that. So that was sent to me. And so I got the full size and this is what we got. So with that being said, let's get after it. We're going to do the lay of the land and I'll explain everything as we go once we get there. So this is for the curved wall. These are all your frame pieces. You got some jiggies. Look out for these two little guys. I'll show you what those are all about. Little crispy dudes. Actually, we'll send that to the back. There's a couple holes there. But yeah, we got the little jiggy parts there. And again, Operation Supermodel. This is all 063. We're trying to reduce the weights, reduce the tariffs, all of that, whatnot. So 063, keeping with it. So these are going to be for the Twinzzz. They're basically blade signs. I'll show you what's up with the Twinzzz. 1/4 inch for the base of the curves and also where kind of everything attaches with the blade signs. So if we look for these little nuggets, back to 063, I got the skins because you have to roll those. And then of course they're just basically blade signs. So 063 and all of the stuff we need to make the base, which is just going to be a giant blade sign as well. The base jiggies, go over those. And then I did choose to keep the skins 09 for the base, just to give it some thickness in case somebody wants to step on them or just to give it a little weight. Also, I think they're just smoother, you know, as a flat surface, they'll look better. 1/2 inch clear little display plaques. We'll go over that. So there we are. So what I'm going to do is I'll break it up. I'll get to the curve at the end. So we'll just do the boring stuff first. The layout is, as you look at it, the high point is on the leftish side and that goes to the right. So I went ahead and instead of left and right confusing as it becomes, we're doing nautical again. So the port side is going to be this blade sign on the left. The blade signs I'm calling the Twinzzz, even though they're not technically identical, but they're twins. They're just two little, and these are only 2 inches deep. So essentially you've got cabezon blade signs. They're not that big. So we have on the port side and we have the starboard side, and then we have the smile in the middle. And then I did, once you get to the smile, because it's, you know, one side's higher than the other side, that is left to right. So when you're dealing with the smile parts on the curve wall, you have left side, right side. But otherwise you have port and starboard, and that applies to the Twinzzz and to the base, because that way it's not confusing left, right, whatever. So let's go over the Twinzzz first. It's the easiest because again, they're just blade signs. They do have a C channel in the front because they're basically, they have these little attachment, the acrylic points there. I wanted that to be strong because we do have the ability for somebody to stand in front of this thing and kind of pull on it, or I don't know, walk by, catch it with their strap on their, you know, on their little handbag or something and just give it a good pull. So I wanted to make sure that these things, I mean, obviously if somebody wants to get froggy and destroy this thing, they can, but I wanted to give it a fighting chance. So these standoffs are going to be 5/16 stud mount. So I wanted that. So they're going to be only on the face side. We have these C channels, and then you're going to 5/16 riv nut in really good, nice and strong. And then of course on the bottom you have for your jiggies, you're going to trap the 1/4 inch plates. Those go inside here. Those where I said to look out for those, but you can 193 those in, burn them to the jiggies, and that way they're nice and strong. And we're connecting those jiggies to the frame and giving this thing a fighting chance. If somebody, you know, a little kid or something wants to pull on it, sit on it, give it a fighting chance. So anyway, but all that's, blade signs, you've got that same thing here, just a little different shape, but they all have the same kind of riv nuts out the front, nothing on the back, keep it looking sexy. Now, this is going to be more for paint but for everybody, obviously having this thing just sticking out is a blade of death. And then this little nugget here, I just see ouchie all over this. So maybe give it a nice little round once you get this thing kind of on there. But I think it'll be kind of up to paint and prep too. If you guys are watching this, hopefully you guys watch, let's pass it on that. Let's watch out for the ouchie for this whole thing. Cause it's just, again, it's just waiting to give somebody a good stabby, look at it. So I did round the edges of these, so we'll see. But hopefully we don't cause any cut off appendages or anything. So anyway, that's the Twinzzz. I think you got those. Make sure it's all nice and strong. And then the base, how low can you go, is again just one giant blade sign. I think you just made one for the now leaving. Thank you for the desert something wild animal reserve. This is kind of the same thing, except it's just sags in the middle. So you have two different species. You have your middle, your M's, are just two C channels that are going to hug on the outside. This doesn't go on the inside, it goes on the top, and you're just going to cleco and burn it. And then you're just going to have your usual around the side there. You're just going to cleco your strip. And again, S and P. So you got starboard and port, not left and right, just to keep it, not confusing. But everything with an M is these guys here in the middle. Boom, boom, boom. And then the end ones are a little bit shorter, same kind of family, but without anything on them. So those go there. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then that will be what supports the blade sign. So what you're looking at here are the Twinzzz. That's one blade sign, and then that's the other blade sign. So that's how that'll work. And then I don't really have anything, just try to bend this and make it look sexy, but this just kind of wraps around. But there was no room for a tooth, and a cleco. So just do the best you can to wrap that. But this seam will come up to the end there. So this is your front piece there in one shot right there. And then this comes around this way. So you do have a top and a bottom. The top, obviously you can't tell, it's not going to be green in aluminum, but it has the smaller holes and it says top. And the bottom one will have the access holes to get 5/16 hardware, because everything's going to bolt from the bottom. You're going to bolt the Twinzzz on from the bottom, and you're going to bolt the smile, the bend curve wall from the bottom. So something different here. I want to give this a try. If this works, I hope so. So you're going to bend these like we do to give them a little bit of strength, but don't rivet these yet. Just keep these separate. And then I'm thinking what you can do is actually use the framing to hold the jigs together. You'll use these pieces here to hold these jigs together. But when you bend these two and you bend these two, I staggered them so that way the top guy will be on this side here, and then the bottom guy will be on this side. And I put a little gap in between, but theoretically the rivet holes should all line up together. So you should be able to burn a rivet or a screw through all 4 flanges. So like I said, go ahead and bend these and put, kind of semi-assemble it, but don't, maybe you can put a cleco or something, but you're going to use the frame first and then give that a shot. The only other kind of weird thing is that these guys will get riveted together first, but they're a skinny guy that actually fits in between the jiggies. So everything else sits on the outside of the jiggy, and you tack it either inside if you can get the gun in, or like we do, tack the lip, and then you're going to grind it smooth for the face to Lords. But like all of these guys will be face level for Lords to put the skin on. But these guys here actually go in between, because I didn't know if I could get, right here, you're trying to get that in there, get the gun in there, all that, whatever. So this guy actually goes in between, and you're going to tack it on the inside to itself. And then when it goes to put the face on, obviously this is going to be a huge space that the face will float over. So put some good gluey splotch to float the face. So the face will be sitting on top here. It'll be sitting here and there, but there's actually nothing there. So just, like I say, Lords it up good and let it cure. But otherwise, there's really nothing else of that. It's just giant blade sign. Do what you can to work your way around. Keep track. These guys here is like that's up. So just keep an eye for that little tiny guy and keep your starboards, keep your ports, all that. I think you can figure out that the shorter one goes on the front, the longer one. Anyway, so that's the base, one big giant blade sign. And then you're just going to lord your top and bottom, make it sexy. The one hole, that's the one mounting hole for the Twinzzz. So make sure that's clear so we can get a bolt through it. That's the way I had to do it. But otherwise, there you go. So giant blade sign, that gets sent out separate. So that way it's easy to work on. Get your Twinzzz all good to go. And now final boss battle. Woohoo, curve. So this one here, a little bit of a challenge because if this is a straight wall that isn't chopped from a high point to a lower point, then we would just make it no problem. All of these little verticals would all be just square and everything's fine. But now we're getting into sort of a 3D problem that when you take a curved wall that from the front looks flat, like you gave it a buzz cut, like your hair, you just went flat across the top. Well, that creates a problem because you have actually two circles of of different diameters. So you're actually working with a circle that is this big, and then you actually have another circle that's 2 inches inline. That gives a different radius. And so if you have two different circles on two different radiuses, but you chop them at an angle like this, that means that every one of these points on your verticals is at a different height. So this one is at a different height than this one. This one's at a different height from this one. And that's when you end up with all your verticals having what looks like this. So you can see where that slopes and it gets more aggressive and it gets more aggressive. And so I was able to use this. So your lowest point is actually at 30 inches. And then your highest point is at 35 inches. So those are nice even numbers. And so at the very, very, very tippy point of this, you have 35. And at the very, very, very lowest tippy point, you have 30. So that means that at this point, that's going to be your lowest point. And at this point, that's the highest. And so that checks out. And then you can actually lay this out using dead reckoning. I kind of joke that it's sort of like using a sextant and charts to get my ship around the Earth and using, the Orion's belt. But you can see where it hits here is going to be a little bit in from at the highest point. So this red is actually the face. It's the front circle. And you can see at the highest point, that's 35. But where this one hits is over here, and it's more like 34 7/8, which is why you get this slant. So your highest point on the face, which is red, and you can see where I color coded that red, is the highest point, 35. Then you need to slope down where it connects here to the blue side, which is a little bit less, which is confirmed here. So this is where it engages here, this whole flat nonsense like that. So anyway, so I was able to dead reckon these and actually lay that out and get this particular smile. And it all kind of worked out. And then I was able to then confirm it with Fusion the first time that I'm actually using 3D software to render something to more or less confirm my dead reckoning. So I feel like I'm cheating a little bit because, like I said, I'm used to using a sextant and the North Star and the shoreline to guide me around like Amerigo Vespucci. But this is like using the GPS in a F-22 Raptor. So it's a little bit cheating. But anyway, I was able to confirm that, yes, this here is 35 and this here is 30. But these particular points are a different height because when you want to look at it flat like that, and you want to see it flat like that, then yes, you have two circles of different radiuses that need to have different points and heights in order to keep this flat like that. And in order to chop it like that, it really helped to be able to, create this system where I had a 30-inch and a 35, and then I was able to create a plane and slice it. So that, to me, again, is cheating. But then again, that also allowed me to then extract using the software. I could make a DXF of this 3D length where it goes up and curves. So this right here is no problem for Corel because it's two-dimensional. lays out flat. But when you have sort of a increasing elevation plus a turn, it was helpful to be able to. So this is my first one where I'm actually cheating, and I exported a DXF route piece from 3D to augment my Corel. So, and that's it right here. So this is the first piece directly from, you can see where the nodes are kind of funky because Fusion. But I did take the bottom, which is the 2D render, and I stretched it like I would have. And so I would have been able to, if you just stretch it along the plane of the X, the middle stays the same and everything follows. But it did sort of, it does distort right here, but it was enough to be serviceable. So on something as flat and small as this was, we probably would have got away with being able to just stretch this just with a little X fudge, because this distance is longer than this distance. So that's why, but it did help, and this does check out. I kind of looked at it and made sure. So we'll get to that. So back to this, enough of me, we're carrying on, whatever, you can just skip that part. So what you're gonna wanna do, what we're looking for is to get to something like this. So you're gonna have your NC channel. We've got 3/4 by 2 and 3/4 by 2, 3/4 by 2. And I have all the verticals laid out with letters, with right on the right, left on the left, and I have A, B, C, D all the way through. And then we have the center panels, which are going to lock the verticals in place until you can get the rest of this curve. So the party starts by bending up all these parts, but working with from 8, the center panel, over to 1, you're going to work these all as one unit first. So get these bent, and then when you bend these up, I'm going to give you these guides. Look for these guides. And these guides are going to be the angle that you're looking for in order to create this curve. Because as these lay out, as you can see up here, you can see where these guys are going to come together, and you're going to rivet those together. But obviously that's not 90. So the whole idea is to get it to match this as perfect as possible. But what you're going to want is maybe a little overcook of this. But before you just start bending things, I wouldn't bend these to 90, because bringing them back to this is a little bit of work, and you might mess up this corner here. So take your time to make sure that all of these are bent to this guy here. And you just slide it back and forth, make sure we're good. But if anything, overcook a little bit is fine, but don't go full 90. Overcooked from this, undercooked might be a problem, because you're gonna have to push it at that point. So once you get all these guys good, then grab the green jiggies, and then you're going to rivet them where the smile is on the flange side. So out, because the flange goes out, and so does the smile. Then you're going to take one for one and rivet the top, rivet, 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 rivet. Then what you're going to do is you're going to be riveting the verticals, and what the idea is these green guys are going to smash the verticals in place. So this bearing edge and this bearing edge, once you rivet them together, is going to force, this green guy is going to force the curve. And don't worry about the ends yet. Don't worry about the ends. The verticals on the ends stay off. So go ahead and rivet this system together of flat jiggies that force the smile when you rivet all of these together. So rivet the verts. So you're going to rivet this flange through this vert into this flange. And then you're going to rivet this flange through this vert into this flange. And then these guys that are already on top are going to kind of smash and force the issue, and you should end up with a forced smile without end caps. And all of these guys here start at this level, and they're going to stay at that level all the way along. So this is flat. So this guy here is going to be that much higher at this end. So this doesn't ascend with the curve. This just goes right across. So your inner system should be jiggies and these guys all riveted together, ready to go. Then what you're going to do is grab the bottom 1/4 inch plate that looks like this. So you'll have your left on one side, span 1 goes here, span 2 goes there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all 193 clicos, and you're going to 193 those to the bottoms of all of these guys here. Then you'll see that you're ready to cleco, not rivet, your end caps on. So you can see where the end caps are ready to burn in. I have space for that. So that'll tuck in there to that 1/4 inch. And then once you get that on there, don't worry about the top yet. You're just getting these on. You're going to go ahead and tack these guys on, because obviously we can't have rivets on the outside. So you're going to tack your ends on, and then that'll allow you to tack the 1/4 inch in at the base. And then once these are all clecoed, and you have this side on too, tack that in. Then you're going to tack the 1/4 inch to the flanges, but I would be careful that you want to evenly tack things. We don't need to get too crazy, but if you burn on this side, then maybe burn on this side too. So if you like put a tack and a tack, make sure you put a tack and a tack. Just so that way it balances it, because we don't want to put all the heat on one side and maybe make it do something weird or whatever. You know what I mean? So make sure it's balanced, because when you're dealing with these curvies, things, anyway, so that's the idea. Not too much heat, but make sure it's all tacked. Tack your verticals here and there. Make sure they're evenly tacked. But we don't want this 1/4 inch to get too froggy. I know the other issue is that you're doing 1/4 to 1/16. Never fun, but I'm sure you guys could figure it out. So once you have those in there, then you can also make the decision if you want to tack the top green boys to the verts. They're going to be smashed in there pretty tight. I don't know if you'll need to go and tack this to this, where it's meeting. I don't know. So it's kind of up to you. If you want to throw a tack on both sides, on both, just work your way around. You'll want to probably tack this to that for sure, the vert on the vertical outside one. Well, again, whether or not you need to go through the center of this and tack these to the verts as they go through, I don't know. You make the call. And then once the base is on and the verts are tacked, then all that's left is to get the top on, the finesse. Now, in order to get the top on, I made a little tray. So you're going to bend these guys up and you're going to tack these onto here. And it's going to be a little support tray for the top lid, the 1/4 inch. So you can see here, you're going to cleco that on, bend that up. It's going to be at an angle, and then it's going to sit there. Now this one, you'll want to overcook it, but you could bend it by hand, but it's definitely going to have to match the bend, this angle here. So I have it laid out here. So this is what that will look like. See, you'll cleco it and tack it. And this is the 1/4 inch top face. So because this is 1/4 inch plate, but at an angle, you can see where that now is a problem. So the overlap here is what you're going to be dealing with. I went ahead and clipped a 1/16. So Fusion gave me the exact, right? And that's now out of 1/4 inch, but this is exactly that. And this is exactly that. But what I did is I just went ahead and chopped a 1/16 off, but you'll have to deal with this. So what I would do is don't lose your factory edge, but get ready to kind of carve, to kind of carve this back to give yourself room on the left side. Now it doesn't have to be pretty, but you're going to want to carve that back as much as possible, but keep your factory edge, but essentially carve it back. Now it's going to be Bondo, it's going to be all that, so it's fine. Don't worry about it too much. This side though, you should be fine. It should be almost exact, because the opposite problem is that this will tuck in because you're starting there. And if anything, you're going to have a little bit of Bondo there because that's actually going to be lower, but it is what it is. But so you have the opposite problem there. And then you can see where I kind of aimed that little tray right there. So if everything works out perfectly, you should have the edge, the right edge should just sit right on your guy there. And you can either tack this, because this is before you put the skins on. You can either tack this or lords it or however you're going to do it. And then because at the center point of both arcs, they are equal distance. So this is 32.5 and this is 32.5. And that checks with science is that at the perpendicular point of your circle, these two circles are the same. So at 35 over here and 30 over here, this is 32.5 and this is 32.5, even though the inside circle then goes different from there and there. So I gave you a North Star to navigate by. So this one kind of elongated cleco is equidistant in between, and that should set you up for success for the 193 in the center. So you should be able to kind of start here and use this as a reference point, and you can undo it, take it off, work on it, set it back down, throw a 193 down in the center, and then you can work and sculpt these stupid, edges over here, and then you can kind of work and sculpt here without losing your sort of North Star. So you can keep throwing a Cleco in that. And then once you're ready, this should sit, theoretically, each point, it should sit right across, and that should sit perfectly along each of these slanty, boop, boop, boop. So each of these verticals. So you should be able to tack this to each vertical. And that's going to put in your top boy. And then once that's all done, you're ready for faces. And we're almost done, promise. So faces, I went ahead and gave you, you can see the layout of the face. So I didn't need Fusion for this. My macros do the length of the curve and all that. So I got those down. So you can see where the face actual length is here, and I have it kind of ghosted here. Now, instead of giving you the exact shape, which would be a really hard target to hit, plus that when you start the roller, you're going to lose like an inch. It's always funky. So I gave you 4 inches on both sides just to get it started left to right. And then because if I were to give you a tapered piece, the pressure of the metal would change. So to start here, you get a different bend because of pressure squish by the time you get here. So I did it on purpose. I gave you a square, rectangle, but square piece. That way, when you run it through, it will be the same pressure and you can get the same curve. Then what you're going to do is get it, run it through one way, flip it, run it through the other. So that way it's kind of even. But you're going to do the front and the back. And then these Cleco holes, the center one should line up, because I gave you so much to work with, you don't have to worry about it. But if you line up the center ones and use solid Clecos there, that gets the party started. And then I gave you long boys a little bit just to try to reference. Hopefully it works out. But if you keep this square to the rollers, perpendicular, you should get a nice even, and then it should give you 1 inch from the bottom, and it should give you 1 inch from the highest point. And then you're just going to Lords it, big old Lords party. And you're just going to Lords on all of the verticals and then do the best you can. That's why I chose 1/4 inch. That's all you're really going to get. So make sure you put a fatty bead, fatty on both sides of these, and utilize that 1/4 inch and really squish it down. And then you're just going to go ahead, and I would suggest getting a cordless circ saw. Don't use a cutting blade, because a cutting wheel, too much heat, too much noise, too much everything. Jigsaw might work, but again, slow heat. So, and also the up and down is pulling on the glue. I would let these cure overnight, and then you're going to come in with a small circ saw with a small kerf, and then hit this as close as you dare. And that way you take off as much as you can, and then you're going to trim route. Just make sure that you keep the trim route square, because when you're trim routing something that's a little bit over 90 here or whatever, you could dig in. So be careful that you keep the bearing as shallow as possible. And then when you're trim routing around, don't dig in, careful. But anyway, that's going to be the secret, is just circ saw off as much as you dare, as close as you dare, and then go ahead and do some trim routing. And that's how it's going to be. That's how we're going to hit that target. So, and then that'll do it. So ultimately, it's not that difficult, but it's going to be some fun. I hope it all works out. But other than that, I think we've got it. I think now you have the idea. And yeah, welcome Fusion. Getting good. I'm still a new boy, but we'll get there. So with that being said, that's it. If you have any questions, hit me up. Check the